Have you ever done something your doctor recommended and felt worse? You went for procedures, got the prescribed medications, followed the advice, but inside something quietly said, "This isn't working. There's a problem here?" My name is Murat Aliyev. I am 55 years old and have been a doctor for 30 years. Today, I will tell you something that most of my colleagues would never say out loud. In 9 out of 10 cases where a patient over 55 comes in with complaints of weakness, brain fog, joint pain, and poor sleep, it is not a disease. It is the result of what they do every day and sincerely believe is beneficial, what they were advised to do, what they have diligently followed for years. But there was one in every 10. The person for whom it is now too late to turn back. Now, I will talk to you about 7 things that millions of people over 55 do every day, paying the price with their most valuable asset, their health and mental clarity. And finally, I will name a product that most people throw away. Currently, there is a product in the kitchen, and it contains a substance that protects neurons better than any pharmacy medication. Keep this in mind. I will return to this later. I had a patient, Galina Stepanovna, 64 years old, a retired accountant. She took care of her health throughout her life. She didn't smoke, didn't drink alcohol, and did Nordic walking 3 times a week. She was eating right, lean, no fried foods, without unnecessary calories. She followed the doctor's advice for her heart to the letter. 2 years after retiring, she could no longer count change in the store. She was mixing up her grandchildren's birth dates. She was waking up at 3 in the morning with an inexplicable anxiety. Do you know what ruined her? What was recommended for her heart? The thing she thought was healthy. I will explain what it is when we get to nutrition. First of all, 5 red flags that cannot be ignored. If you find 2 out of 5 in yourself, go to the doctor this week, not a month later, this week. First, you remember very well what happened 20 years ago, but you can't remember what you ate for dinner last night. This is called short-term memory loss. It's not old age, it's a signal. Second, you're not just forgetting words, you're changing them. Instead of saying refrigerator, you say television, and instead of girl, you say granddaughter. You start a sentence and lose your thought right in the middle. Third, your loved ones notice changes in your behavior, but you can't see them. Your spouse says, "You've been irritable." Your kids say, "Dad, you're repeating yourself." Listen to them. They see things you can't. Fourth, you can't plan things you used to do without thinking. Remembering a shopping list, it's hard now. A familiar recipe, you need to open the book. Fifth, you put things in places you've never put them before, and you can't remember why you did it. Now write a number in the comments. How many flags did you find? 0, write that too. This is important. I need to understand who is watching this video so that I can produce the content you really need. Here is the most important part. Dementia doesn't start when you notice it. It begins 15 to 20 years before the first symptoms, silently, unnoticed. But, and this is the key word, it can be stopped in the early stages. Sometimes it can be reversed. I have seen this with my own eyes, not in books, with my own eyes. I will eventually tell this story. The man was 78 years old, and he came back to life, completely. But first, perhaps slowly right now, you are destroying something that will be extremely difficult to regain later. Before going through 7 destructive procedures, I want to ask you something. Here's a little test. Count from 100 down to 0, skipping 7. 100, 93, 86, give it a try. I'll wait. If you made a mistake on the 2nd or 3rd step, don't worry, this is not a condemnation, but it is a sign that concentration has dropped, and in a few minutes you will understand why, because what I am about to explain directly affects your brain's ability to perform exactly these types of tasks. The first destructive act is chronic insomnia, which people carry like a medal after the age of 55. I sleep 5 hours. That's enough for me, they proudly say. This is not willpower. This is the accumulated damage that you no longer feel. While you sleep, a system in your brain that was activated in 2012 works. This is called the glymphatic system. Imagine the night cleaners who come after the store closes. They remove the waste, mop the floors, and put everything back in its place. Your brain does exactly this during sleep. It cleanses itself of the toxic proteins that accumulate throughout the day, primarily from beta amyloid, that substance found in the brain in Alzheimer's disease. But here's something that very few people know. This system works most efficiently only when you sleep on your side. Not on your back, not on your stomach. You must lie on your side. Research has shown that in this position, the brain's cleansing occurs 25% more effectively. Try sleeping on your side tonight. This is the first small step you can take within a few hours. The second destructive procedure is the fat-free diet that has been promoted for decades as cardiovascular health. This is what killed Galina Stepanovna. I should pause here and explain something important about the brain. 60% of your brain is made of fat. This is not a metaphor. Literally, fat tissue. And every time you remove fats from the diet in the name of health, you deprive your brain of building materials. Neurons cannot build the myelin sheath properly. Signals between cells slow down. Memory declines. Concentration drops. Mood, along with them. Galina Stepanovna drank fat-free kefir for 7 years, gave up eggs, removed butter. She did this for her heart. But during this time, the brain was starving. Here it is, the promised secret, a product that most people throw away. Egg yolk, not the white, the yolk. Oh yes, the part that many people carefully separate and throw away because they say there's cholesterol in it. Here it is. Egg yolks contain choline. Without this substance, your brain cannot produce acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter for memory and concentration. According to some data, 90% of people over 55 are critically low in choline. Not because they don't eat eggs, just because they only eat the whites. 2 to 3 whole eggs a day is not a threat to a healthy person's heart. It is nourishment for the brain. When I explained this to Galina Stepanovna and she added the yolks back into her diet, 3 months later she said, "Doctor, the fog has lifted. I am thinking clearly again." The third destructive procedure is complete social isolation under the guise of a calm old age. After retirement, many consciously narrow their social circle. Enough of the hustle. I will rest. And this is one of the most dangerous decisions one can make after the age of 55. A study published in The Lancet in 2023 revealed a shocking truth. Chronic loneliness accelerates cognitive decline faster than smoking, faster than diabetes, 20% faster than lack of physical activity. Social isolation is not just a sadness, it is a neurobiological disaster because the brain is a social organ. When you talk, debate, joke, and observe the facial expressions of your interlocutor, dozens of neural networks work at the same time. This is not rest. This is the best workout possible. The fourth destructive practice is seeing passive rest as the only entertainment. Watching television for 7 hours a day, scrolling through news feeds. I'm just resting. A brain that is not given tasks begins to shrink. Literally. Unused neural connections undergo atrophy. This is called use it or lose it, and this rule applies even at 80 years old. Let me explain how your memory works after the age of 55 in human terms, without medical jargon. Imagine a vast library, millions of books. This is your brain. Each book is a memory, a skill, a face, a name. There is a librarian working in the library. This is your attention, your ability to find information. When you were young, the library was small, a few thousand volumes. The librarian was young, quick, knows every shelf by heart. When asked, finds it in seconds. What happens after 55? First of all, the library has grown. It's no longer thousands of books, but millions. 55 years of memories, experiences, faces, events. Try to find what you need instantly. Secondly, the librarian has become wiser, more experienced, but a bit slower. This is normal. This age is not a disease. But, and this is the most important part, if the library has poor lighting, if the shelves are shaky, if there is dust everywhere, if there is no heating in winter, the librarian cannot work normally, even if they are completely healthy themselves. The problem is often not with them. The problem is in the working conditions. This is what these destructive procedures do. They create bad conditions, and the librarian is not to blame. Literally, she has 4 hidden enemies. The first is chronic inflammation. You don't feel it. It doesn't hurt, but it's there. In your veins, your joints, your intestines. It constantly directs the brain's resources to a struggle instead of supporting memory. A person can live with this for years, unaware. Meanwhile, memory quietly declines. The second hidden enemy, deficiencies you don't know about. Vitamin B12. Vitamin D, in the winter months, especially at our latitudes, 80% of people are deficient. Magnesium, omega-3, iron. A blood test will reveal the truth in a day. But most people don't get this test for years. I'll tell a story. Victor, 62 years old, a programmer. He came to me in fear. "Doctor, I forgot the password to my computer, the password I've entered every day for 5 years. I'm standing in front of the screen, blank." I performed standard tests. And do you know what emerged? The problem wasn't in the head, the problem was in the stomach. Victor had gastritis that he had ignored for years. In chronic gastritis, the absorption of vitamin B12 is impaired. Years passed, levels dropped, the brain went hungry. 3 months of B12 injections, and then Victor said, "It's like the fog has lifted. I can read books now without having to read a page 3 times. People thought about aging, but actually it was just one thing missing. The third hidden enemy, the disrupted sleep we mentioned earlier. And the fourth, social isolation that silently and methodically kills the brain. The fifth, destructive practice. 5 specific products that people over 55 see as normal or even beneficial every day. The first enemy on your plate, industrial vegetable oils, sunflower, corn, soy, those sold in bottles and used for frying. When heated, they form aldehydes, toxic compounds that attack neurons. Sergey Ivanovich, 67 years old, has cooked with sunflower oil every day of his life, like everyone else. When he came to me, he complained that his mind wasn't working. He was making mistakes on documents he had never done before. A few years of increasing cognitive fog. When we examined his diet and replaced the oil with butter and cold-pressed olive oil, he said he found himself again after 6 months. This is not magic. This is chemistry. The second enemy, sugar and white bread. Fast carbohydrates cause sudden spikes in insulin levels. Chronic insulin resistance is one of the most significant risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. It is increasingly referred to as type 3 diabetes. Larissa Petrovna, 59 years old, non-diabetic, not overweight. She ate moderately, but every morning she started with white toast with jam and sweet tea. 5 years later, she came with increasing anxiety, sleep disorders, and complaints of emptiness in her head in the afternoon. The analysis showed hidden insulin resistance. We gave up sugar, switched to whole grains, anxiety decreased, sleep returned, fog cleared in 3 months. The third enemy, ultra-processed products. Sausages, instant soups, chips, semi-finished products. They are made in a way that won't let you stop. This is literally an engineering problem for food engineers. They contain trans fats, preservatives, flavor enhancers that chronically inflame the walls of blood vessels. Mikhail Semenovich, 61 years old, retired and started to indulge a little. Sausages, boiled sausages, ready-made meatballs to avoid cooking. He gained 7 kilos in 2 years and started to complain. He loses his train of thought in the middle of conversations, can't remember the roads in the city where he lived his whole life. Diet. That was the first thing I talked to him about. When we eliminated semi-finished products and he started cooking for himself, it became a nerve-wracking training for him. The fourth enemy, alcohol in measured doses. A glass of red wine is good for the heart. This myth still lives on. Modern research is clear. There is no safe dose of alcohol for the brain. After the age of 55, the liver metabolizes alcohol more slowly, its neurotoxic effects increase, and brain volume decreases more rapidly. This is not a moral stance. This is neurobiology. The fifth enemy, excessive salt along with processed products, chronic high blood pressure, even mild working, reduces blood flow to the brain for years without being noticed, until one day something breaks. Now let's talk about what really helps. 5 products that literally nourish your brain. The first hero, fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, herring, omega-3 fatty acids, building blocks for neuron membranes. 68-year-old Tatiana Nikolaevna was afraid of fish because of calories throughout her life. When we added mackerel 3 times a week, she came for a checkup 4 months later and said, "I've started reading books again. I couldn't focus for more than 5 minutes before." Fish is not part of the diet. It is an over-the-counter medicine. The second hero, blueberries and dark fruits. Anthocyanins are antioxidants that can cross the blood-brain barrier and directly protect neurons. Vladimir Arkadyevich, 72 years old, started eating a handful of frozen blueberries every morning on the advice of his wife, who read it somewhere. 6 months later, he came and said with a smile, "I don't know if it's the blueberries or not, but I've stopped looking for my glasses on my head." Such a detail, such a result. The third hero, cold-pressed olive oil. Its oleocanthal content is a natural anti-inflammatory compound. It acts on the brain like a mild, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug without the side effects of pharmacy tablets. 2 to 3 tablespoons a day in salad or on bread, not for frying, cold. The fourth hero, walnuts. Their shapes are not a coincidence. They really look like the brain. They contain alpha-linolenic acid, a precursor to omega-3, vitamin E, and polyphenols. The research from the University of California showed that consuming just a handful of nuts a day slows cognitive decline. 65-year-old Inna Vasilievna started eating nuts instead of biscuits with her tea every morning. A year later, during her checkup, she showed a 15% improvement in her memory test compared to a year ago. She was 65 at that time. It's never too late to start. The fifth hero, and again we return to our secret, is whole eggs, yolk included. Choline, lecithin, vitamin D, B12, omega-3 in a balanced form. 2 eggs in the morning. This is not just breakfast. This is a neuroprotection program. Moreover, it is one of the most accessible and cheapest options. The sixth destructive procedure is to ignore chronic stress and anxiety backgrounds. After the age of 55, many people live in a constant background of stress without even realizing it. Worries about children, worries about money, worries about health, worries about the future. Chronically high levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, literally destroy the hippocampus. This is the brain region responsible for the formation of new memories. Not in a figurative sense. It literally reduces its volume. The seventh destructive procedure is to give up on new tasks with the slogan, "It's too late to learn. I'm too old to learn about smartphones. This isn't for my age. Why do I need something new?" When the brain gives up on every new thing, it accelerates atrophy. However, when it engages with every foreign thing, it creates new connections, at any age. This has been proven. And now, the story I promised. Nikolai Petrovich. He came to me at 78 years old. His wife, Tamara, brought him. He didn't quite understand why they were here. Nikolai Petrovich was an engineer. He built bridges, he published articles, he raised 2 sons, he was the center of the family, the person everyone went to for advice. When Tamara brought him to me, he couldn't say the current year. He didn't recognize the neighbors he had greeted for 30 years. He was forgetting that he had already eaten and wanted to eat again. He was mixing up his grandchildren. I honestly told Tamara, "We can't promise a miracle, but we can do our best to try." And he tried. For him. In his place. With him. Oh, he found his old colleagues, the people he worked with 40 years ago. He organized meetings at home. At first, Nikolai Petrovich sat quietly, not recognizing them. Then he began to respond to familiar voices. Stories slowly surfaced in pieces, in a complex way, but they were coming to the surface. He took up chess. He used to love it in his youth, but hadn't played in a long time. His first games lost to him. He forgot whose turn it was, rearranged the pieces. Then Tamara, a 76-year-old woman who had never played chess in her life, sat down to learn. She got a book for beginners. Every evening, a game with her husband. She kept a diary in his name. She wrote down what happened during the day. In the evenings, she read it aloud to him. Then she began to try to write on her own. Crooked, complex, with mistakes, but on her own. She completely changed her diet. She eliminated everything I told you about. She added fish, nuts, eggs, blueberries. They started walking together every morning. Not for exercise, but for conversation, because he spoke better while walking. A year passed. Nikolai Petrovich came to the appointment by himself, without his wife. Tamara was waiting in the hallway. I performed the same tests. He counted from 7 to 0, without making a single mistake. He stated the current year, month, and day of the week. He remembered the names of his 5 grandchildren. He asked me for a piece of paper, and wrote his address without any errors. This was not a miracle. This was a result of effort, daily, without holidays, without celebrations. He did not return to the way he was at 40. I do not promise you that. But he returned to life. He recognized his loved ones again. He could converse again. He laughed at jokes again and told stories from his youth. He was himself again. He is now 83 years old. He still walks every day. He still plays chess with Tamara. He still eats blueberries in the mornings. At that time, he said to me, with tears in his eyes, "I got my husband back." I am not telling you this to surprise you. I'm telling you this because most people believe that if it has started, it is too late. You can no longer change anything. This is not true. Yes, the earlier the better. Yes, it's easier at 55, not at 78. Yes, prevention is always more effective than treatment. But the brain is plastic until the last day of your life. It can form new connections at any age. It can regain what was lost. You just need to give it a chance. It's never too late. There are 3 steps you can take now, not a week from now, not on Monday. Today. Lie on your side this evening. Left or right, it doesn't matter. Let the glymphatic system function properly. Tomorrow at breakfast, 2 whole eggs. With the yolks, don't throw away the yolks. This may be the product you've been throwing away for years. The next day, call someone you haven't spoken to in a long time. An old friend, a colleague, a relative you've lost touch with. This is not sentimentality. This is a neurobiological necessity. 3 steps, small, simple, free. But these will trigger a chain reaction. Now, I have 3 requests. First, write a word in the comments right now. I'm starting. This is a public promise you make to yourself. When we make a public promise, we fulfill it 3 times more often. I read every comment, each one. Second, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. We have information about heart health, joints, blood pressure, and living long and healthy. Not just existing, living. Third, and most importantly, send this video to the person you thought of while watching, to your mother, to your father, to a friend over 55, to a neighbor you haven't seen in a long time. Nikolai Petrovich came to me by chance. His wife saw the program and decided to take action. I don't know how his life would be without that program. Maybe this video will be such a program for someone close to you. Maybe you will hit the send button, and a year later, this person will thank you. It takes 3 seconds, free, and it can change someone's life. My name is Murat Aliyev. I am 55 years old. I have been a doctor for 30 years. I do everything I talk about every day. Not because I'm afraid of this, because I want to think openly, remembering what matters, getting to know the people I love, and I want the same for you. Your brain is working right now. It allowed you to watch this video until the end, to understand and to remember. Take good care of it. It is you.